The hand mirror is very powerful. It reflects one attack or one debuff, and as a result, this means that you can sometimes turn a massive attack back on the enemy. This is especially useful during this boss. The boss ramps up its attack turn after turn. This usually means that you have to take down the boss very quickly before its attacks become deadly. But that is not the case if you have the hand mirror. If you have the mirror, let the boss throw its massive attacks at you, and the mirror will reflect them. In this way, you can turn one of the more deadlier bosses into one of the easiest bosses in the game. Here I pick up a pearl, and I run over here to upgrade it. Actually, I have 2, so I upgrade 2. It says the upgraded pearl will affect your buffs. This means it will affect most of the things that you can see down here. In this case, I'm using the harpoon, so it affects my buffs twice, and as you can see, it really ramps up the spikes there. The bargain reward is one of the most powerful rewards in the game. Get up to 5 bargain rewards, and you get free upgrades and free rerolls. And even though it's really unlikely that you'll ever get 5 bargains, in fact it may be impossible, even having 3 or 4 bargains will cut down your costs significantly. When you magnetize things together, you can sometimes do a grab and get nothing in return. The subtle trick is to try to grab the magnet itself. That way, it drags all of the other stuff with it, especially if there are other magnets involved. Even if you slightly miss and you grab something near it, there may still be enough magnetic power to pick up the whole thing. When the enemy is going to attack, then concentrate a little more on defense. When the enemy is doing anything else, then focus more on attack, or perhaps on buffing. You can see here the enemy's not going to attack during its next move, so I turn my 100 block into 50 strength. This is a game fundamental, but it's based on the fact that whatever shields and block you put up will disappear at the end of the enemy's turn. If the enemy isn't going to attack during its next move, then picking up shields is pretty pointless other than to, clear them out of the way. You are going to learn this as you go along, but you kind of need a way to rebuild your health. This is typically through having a few health items littered about the place, and there are also buffs and rewards that will rebuild your health. This is an interesting one. I managed to get Junk Jet twice, which deals damage to a random enemy whenever an item is added into the machine, and then the Vampire Fangs down here regenerates health whenever I deal damage, and even when the fluff falls into the tank, I'm still regaining health. The point is, you need to find a way to regain health, because as you fight, you can't always rely on blocking and damage avoidance. Let me explain synergies, because synergies and scaling are a key part to getting past the final bosses, and they are downright essential if you want to survive any amount of time on infinite mode. I'm playing the squid character, so the second claw is always a tentacle. It comes with the water bottle and sponges, which obviously work together, aka synergize very well together. Because I am often filling the tank with water, having the poison bath bomb helps to make the fluff poisonous. Add to this the poison flask to double or triple the enemy's poison, and that works well too. The poison water also works well with the water pistol. The teddy creates more fluff, so that then there's more poison fluff to pick up, and the 2 tentacles mean that I can pick up more stuff when the tank is full of water. I made these choices because they all work well together, both for the attributes of my character and in a way that synergizes very well. Scaling works a little differently. The general premise is, if a perk, buff, effect or reward has a percentage or multiplier, then it's more powerful over the long run than something that has a finite number. For example, something like the Strength Amulet will raise your strength by 5 each time it is picked up. However, the Strength Potion will double your strength each time you pick it up. As a result, and in theory, it will have a bigger effect over the long term. Like here, my strength goes from 24 to 48 to 96. Though do note that the developers are aware of this, which is why things like the Strength Potion are typically limited, so it's difficult to pick up too many at one time. In the next tip, I explain how to use a money-based synergy, and this in itself works because you can scale up how you earn coins, and in turn, you can scale up how much health and how much attack damage you can do. Each playable character has perks and assets that suit different types of playstyles. They have different synergies and different scaling and so forth. For the first character, things are pretty open, but if you are struggling on the harder difficulties, try to focus on a money-based synergy. This is because scaling the money perks goes a very long way in this game. Here is how you build a money-based synergy. Try to re-roll and grab the money-based rewards. This includes the golden armor, which improves your health bar depending on how much money you have, the golden dagger, which outputs more damage depending on how much money you have. The Hand of Midas is very useful, as are all of the methods for making money. The Thief reward is also valuable for the same reason, as is Greedy, and as I say, any way to improve the number of coins you hold. Bargain is also very good if you can get it, because it lowers the costs of re-rolls and upgrades, which, over the long term, makes it easier to build a bigger stash of money. Changing the fundamental attributes of your items via the Transmute function is only necessary if you want to work certain synergies and certain perks to their fullest. For example, I have 3 magnets in my inventory, so I figure, why not try turning everything into metal? That way, my magnets will attract all of my items when they drop, while leaving the other fluff and non-metal items behind. Luck is still a factor in this roguelite game, by which I mean you are going to need to roll with the punches. For example, veteran players will see that I was trying to go for a money scaling build right here so I could beat the nightmare mode. But in the end, because I had to roll with whatever I was given, it ended up turning into a strength build. The point being that sometimes you have to play the cards that you are dealt and then just hope for the best. Having the music on is not always a good experience. This is just my opinion, but the music tracks for this game, it's not the sort of thing you can listen to over and over again and really enjoy it. Maybe you are watching this in the future and they've added a whole new bunch of music, but instead put on a podcast or something in the background. But I say, strongly consider turning off the music for what I consider to be a better experience. This isn't really a tip, it's just a reminder for new players that you can push things using your claw, though in many cases, when you pick stuff up, you're going to knock the items off anyway. Here is me unlocking Harley. I have tested this with a bit of exploiting, and it seems that the keys don't matter. This may change if the game is patched again, but from my research, you cannot exploit your way into getting the key early. I have a sneaking suspicion that she simply unlocks when you have collected enough keys. This is her cardboard cutout. This is what appears after she's been rescued. Get the antidote on every run. In reality, you probably only need one, but pick it up if you see it. There will come a time when you have the perfect defense, but one of the enemies has sneaked some poison past you. Before you know it, your character is almost dead and there's nothing you can do about it. The antidote eliminates this risk from your gameplay. You only need one, and you will find that it comes in very handy right when you need it. Don't be afraid to re-roll and skip items and even skip rewards. Curate your inventory very carefully. This ensures that you have more control over what drops. You don't want unnecessary things clogging up your workspace. These re-rolls seem cheap because I have the bargain reward 4 times. The 4 bargain rewards is also why these upgrades are so cheap. I'm not going to do a boss guide on all of the bosses, but here are 2 things that I didn't know. The first, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you have the hand mirror against this boss, then all you need to do is pick it up each turn, and a win is almost inevitable. Another that I didn't know is that if you pick up the shark's piggy banks, it increases the boss's strength by 3 points at a time. Yet, if you don't pick them up, they turn into spike balls, which in total will cause more damage over the short term if you are forced to pick them up. Collect all the paws by beating normal difficulty for each character. That way, when you play the more difficult modes, you can choose between different paws and you can have fun mixing up your playstyle. If you start playing on Nightmare mode, you can really experiment and play around. If you want to collect something from the left corner, just let the grabber come out, let it settle, and then let it drop. Don't worry about moving it slightly left or angling it correctly, because most times, if you let it fall where it starts, then you will get the stuff on the left. Just make sure you let it come to a rest first, otherwise this may happen. As for grabbing from the right, it takes a little more skill. You can play Dungeon Clawler on windowed mode, and typically, because the game doesn't use a lot of processing power, you can actually split your screen so that you have the windowed game on one side, and then perhaps a podcast or even another YouTube video on the other side. I make this suggestion because runs can go on for quite a while, and yet it isn't the sort of game where you need to be 100% invested, at all times. The game can be unfair. Like this example here. My run ends because this batch of items doesn't drop down the hole. On the other hand, during a run, this happens. This wasn't an exploit, by the way. The stuff just jumped up there and did its thing. My point being, if you win or lose, seemingly unfairly, it isn't always because your strategy was right or wrong. Sometimes you just get lucky.